like you're back in time. Do you hear voices, JC, sometimes?
I do hear voices right in the middle of what I was talking about.
Huh?
Somebody was speaking to me
See,
about
you
something.
didn't. The thing was, you didn't react because I think those are just the normal voices you hear.
Well, yeah.
They were a little
Whatever it
little
was,
odd.
it woke me up. Stop that stuff.
The poor judge here is thinking, what kind of show did she pay to get on?
Some rinky-dink.
Oh, did I say
I
that?
did not pay, please. I did not. I'm not violating campaign
Now you
regulations.
got her in trouble, Eric.
Here we go.
not
Oh,
pay.
we apologize for little technical difficulties. Not sure what that was. I'm going to blame it on the left wing media.
Yeah,
you know,
I'll go with
has
that.
to be. So, well, guys,
The truth shall prevail.
that's
Yes,
right.
right.
That is right. Well, coming up here in a couple minutes is a guest that we're not going to want to miss. We're actually going to go from now to the bottom of the hour.
Okay, good.
So that time, even though it seemed like wasted time, that was we just took that as the break time. But we do have Judge Amy Salerno sitting right here with us, and it's so nice to have her here. Judge,
Really
you've been on the bench since what, 2005?
Correct.
Yep. And I want to throw out a little trivia question here before Pawpaw gets to his question.
Well,
Who amongst us, JC, Pawpaw, Judge, has been on the Oprah Winfrey Show?
I know the answer. I don't think it's
Yeah.
fair to answer
Yeah,
since I know the answer.
I know it wasn't me.
It wasn't you?
I doubt that it was Papa.
yeah,
He's seen it.
I've seen it once.
Judge, I heard that. Is that true?
I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show in October 17th of 2000. I know that because I had just had my youngest daughter. I was campaigning. I was practicing law. I was in the house, and I was exhausted. But I had created a bill in Ohio, and it was passed, called homicide by child abuse, and it made it for the first time ever murder to kill a child through abuse. It became landmark legislation, but how it became landmark legislation across the country was Oprah Winfrey called me to be on the show, and I was on her show, and she actually ran the show twice, and legislators all over the country called me, and so now it's in all 50
Wow.
states.
Wow.
And sadly, it's used at least once a week somewhere in the United States.
It's horrible.
Wow.
It
Well,
is.
guys, I know we had a little technical difficulties to start, but and actually, I think we want to go to our guest because he is on the line. I want to be cognizant of his time and everything. So our guest today is one that has experienced the most horrific tragedy any parent or person could imagine. It's hard for me to even begin to comprehend what his family and his community have witnessed on February 14th, 2018, and in the days since. But our guest, Andrew Pollack, has done almost the unthinkable. He has taken the murder of his daughter, Meadow Pollack, who died at the hands of a coward who murdered 16 others that day in Parkland, and turned it into a message to inspire change in communities nationwide, to educate parents on what is happening at schools across the country, and to be a part of the solution to reduce these senseless murders in our schools. Mr. Pollack, thanks for waking up early and joining us today. How are you, sir?
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah,
My
but
pleasure.
yeah, it's tough because of the circumstances. But you have been so strong, and we wanted, everyone knows the details for that day. It's been discussed in length, but I wanted to talk about the personal journey for you and your family and the other families since then. It appeared that when the rest of the media was taking the opportunity to speak out against firearms, and it really made me sick to see how quick they jumped to that. You were asking the tough questions on how and why it happened. You weren't blaming the instrument, the chosen tool of this coward, but you wanted to learn what led up to that day and what was in the mind of this monster. Did you feel at that time that you were alone in wanting to know these answers when others were focused on this gun debate?
Well, I got into it just because I wanted to know the facts. I didn't know what was going to be. At the end of the day, I didn't know, but I needed to find out how it happened, why it happened, and who was responsible for letting it happen. My daughter went to a school, and she got murdered, and I just wanted to know the facts. And I feel like I'm alone. There's not many people still out of the families that still push for accountability. But, I'm for accountability, and it's been ever since because I owe it to my daughter. And that's why I wrote this book. It's also like I call it a manual for parents to read and to see what happened in Parkland and see what's going on at school, because these policies are throughout the whole country. And like you say, the mainstream media, they don't want to show the facts. Before his daughter was married, the superintendent and the sheriff were on TV, saying that we need more gun control before my daughter was even buried. So I just needed to know that. And the facts are in my book, Why Meadow Died. And my daughter wanted everyone to know it, every parent in the world to know what happened in Parkland. So it doesn't, they don't put their child in an environment like I put my daughter.
Right. And, as you began to investigate what led up to that day, what did you find out about the past history of the suspect? And, we heard stories about many visits by law enforcement to his family's home. We heard that on one occasion he brought ammunition to the school. He brought skinned animals in the school, and it wasn't uncommon to hear him talk about murder. We also heard one account where there was even a policy to have him searched every time he was on school grounds. What did you find out? What were the facts in that regards?
So the police were to his house over 40 times between him and his brother. Getting arrested. One of the times in the reports there was reports of him animals. His mother's house. His mother needed like $8,000 worth of dent work, and one of there was to the Broward Sheriff's Office that he was going to be a school shooter, and he wasn't arrested for that or even brought in for questioning. After he had the tip, after there was the tip to shoot up the school, he also he trespassed at the school when he wasn't a student, and he wasn't arrested for that either. So the second time he came with a gun and killed my daughter. The first time they didn't do anything about it when he trespassed. And there's records of him dreaming of blood, wanting to kill, never arrested, involuntarily committed, in what they call in order as a Baker Act. A lot of things from these policies that are placed in schools throughout the country of ending, not to end the school to prison pipeline. That's one. There's two things I tell parents what's going on in the public schools that I found out the hard way. One is the lack of discipline, and they wanted to end the school to prison pipeline, so they stopped arresting, they stopped expelling and up suspending students, which creates a chaotic environment. The other big problem with the public schools is they'll take a kid like this murderer and they'll label him special needs. Okay, he's mentally ill, emotionally disturbed, and they label him special needs, where he's not a kid that has dyslexia or autism, where they're disruptive, and we don't mind mainstreaming things like that. We want to help them. But they take mentally ill children and label them special needs. Between the lack of discipline and labeling emotionally disturbed children special needs, because the Americans with Disability Act, it causes a very serious, chaotic environment in the public school systems. And no parent should want to put their child in an environment like that.
We when I was reading through some of the history on this suspect, it stood out. I mean, there were so many opportunities that we miss as society. And as you mentioned, you talked about the Baker Act, and this was something in Florida that allows for the involuntary
institutionalization and examination of individuals for mental health.
Right. So any one of these times where if they put him into that, presumably that might have prevented him from being able to purchase a firearm, but they missed it. I looked here. In 2013, he had 26 disciplinary incidents were added to his record in middle school.
In middle school.
Right.
Yeah.
2013, his mom reported a DV in which there was physical force when she took away his Xbox. But according to clinicians at that time, it didn't meet the criteria for the Baker Act. In 14, he enrolled in a school for behavior issues. In 16, he transferred to Stoneman Douglas High School. Also in 16, he goes and posts Instagram plans on that he had desire to shoot up a school, and he's posting himself with pictures of firearms. Now, at this point, he's not even 18. You know.
No, and he was at the school where after that Instagram post that they cast. So it just was one. And if you look at it, also when we had that shooting in Dayton, Ohio, there was a similar type of it where he made threats at school, and he had a rape list, and he never was arrested. So if the killer would have been arrested or committed, and they did through the full Baker Act, because he drank gasoline, he tried to kill himself, he ran in front of traffic at the school, and never corrected to the full extent where that would have showed up on his background. Yeah. Between that and getting arrested, he wouldn't have been able to purchase the rifle.
How does the system fail that much that with somebody who drinks gasoline, runs into traffic, tries suicide, buys guns, says, I'm going to go shoot up my school, I'm going to kill myself, how does the system fail so badly? You have that law in place, and yet it completely failed all the way along, and from the law enforcement, from the mental health people, everything. I mean, this went on for years and years, and nothing changed. You know, when your own mom's calling and saying my son needs institutionalized, or you're trying to kill yourself by drinking gasoline and running into traffic, is that not a red flag?
Right, it is. And, you know, we're talking to Mr. Andrew Pollack, whose daughter was murdered at Parkland shooting. And, you know, Judge, to that, you know, even as late as January 2018, there was a tip to the FBI that said that this
two tips to the FBI, and nothing was done.
It's just it's
they missed it.
Everybody dropped the ball.
How the system is when Obama was president, Arnie Duncan was Secretary of Education, okay, and the superintendent Robert Rumsey, who came to Broward, he worked for Arnie Duncan in Chicago, and they came up with this brilliant idea that the idea that the teachers must be racist because they're picking out the kids of color more are getting suspended and arrested. So their idea was, let's stop arresting kids or suspending or expelling, and let's put them in some type of healing circles at the schools. So what happens is it hurts everybody. It hurts the kids that are disruptive. It hurts the teachers. It hurts the kids that just want to learn, because once in the community, it creates throughout the whole school district of leniency, where the teachers say, I'm not going to report anything anymore because nothing happens. And that's how you get this environment of this kid getting... Actually, when he was at the school, students were allowed 4 meters per school year without... It was the law enforcement, if you could believe it. So they could sell drugs underneath the felony amount. They could punch the teacher in the face. They could have a fight, and then they could steal an iPhone from another student and never get reported. And then that could happen in 9th grade. 10th grade, it would reset, and they would be able to do 4 more misdemeanors that school year also.
That's incredible.
And that's the environment. That's the environment that it created. And in California now, people think it happened in Broward. California just made a new law. They signed in for Gavin Newsom that it's illegal to disrupt the children. And that's a law in California.
Wow.
Illegal
Mr. Pollack, if you can hang on, we're going to get to the bottom of the hour news. If you can hang on for a minute, we will catch you on the other side if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. We're talking to Mr. Pollack, Mr. Andrew Pollack, whose daughter was tragically murdered at Parkland High School in 2018. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Promise program that he spoke of. We're broadcasting live from the studios of LAPD Firearms and Range. We'll be right back after the break.
News, traffic, and weather for Columbus.
What do you think, Jim?
610 WTVN.
Authorities in Cincinnati say 2 people were fatally shot during an attempted robbery at a hotel Friday night. 15-year-old Jaquan Howard and 20-year-old Tamar Jones pronounced dead after the shooting at the Hampton Inn in Sycamore Township. Another 18-year-old man being treated for being shot in the foot. Cleveland police investigating after 2 people were found dead, another in critical condition with gunshot wounds to the head near West 78th Street and Lorraine Avenue around 4 a.m. this morning. There's no word yet on any suspects.
I know.
A Michigan man in critical condition, life flighter from the scene after a crash early Friday on the Ohio Turnpike in Lorain County. Scott Vaness suffering injuries after his car hit a commercial vehicle, eventually being lodged underneath it. And starting to feel like winter in northeast Ohio, Lake, Geauga, and Ashtabula counties, all under a winter weather advisory starting at 8 o'clock tonight through noon Sunday. It's expected up to 3 to 5 inches of snow may fall. I'm Kyle Cornell.
Live from LAPD Firearms Range and Training Facility, this is On Target, the latest from the firearms industry, the products and politics that affect your hobby and liberty. This program may not be politically correct, but it is On Target. Now, your host, Eric Delbert.
Welcome back to On Target. I'm your host, Eric. Joined today in the LAPD studios with my father, co-owner Phil. He sits to my left. JC from the sales teams to my right. And we are honored to have Franklin County Judge Amy Salerno sitting to my far right. We also have on the line with us today Mr. Andrew Pollack, whose daughter died at Parkland. And we're talking about some of the policies. He wrote a book, Why Meadow Died, and it is really, it's eye-opening. It's really unbelievable what led up to that. And contrary to what you see in the media and what you read, it wasn't about the gun. It was about so many other things. And as we went into break, Mr. Pollack, we were talking about the Promise program, I think they called it. And this is one where, and you mentioned it, and I think it's worth repeating, that at the time you could have 4 misdemeanors a year per student before it gets reported to police. So you could sell guns in the hallway, steal someone's iPhone, be in a fight, and it's not until the 4th one before it even gets reported.
After the 4th one, yeah.
After
number
the
5,
fourth.
After 4. It has to be number 5, yeah.
I mean, what are we doing in our schools?
And felonies were optional for the, it was a fact, felonies were optional for the principal to report.
So, Mr. Pollack, when you took the stance that you needed to do something, you and some of the other families, and you went after the seats at the school board for Broward County. Tell us a little bit about that meeting when the superintendent stood up there and said that this individual was not part of that program.
I thought you really to start digging into it, because here he's a Harvard grad, this failed superintendent, Runcie. Came from Harvard, from Chicago, and when asked the superintendent, was he ever in the Promise program? And the superintendent said he was never in the Promise program while in high school. So right then and there, when he said while in high school, we knew that the guy was covering something up, that it must have been when he was in middle school. And then 2 months later, it came out that he was in middle school. But these type of programs, it just creates an environment where it's nothing's reported, and it puts in. I'm sure the judge knows about diversionary programs.
Yes.
But board members and school faculty, and put them in charge of what law and order is. That's when you have a failed system. And a lot of these bureaucrats that run these school districts make the police out to be the enemy, when really they are the good guys. They want to help. They want to mentor these kids in the right way to help them, lead them down the righteous path in life. So diversionary programs do work, but I believe that you need law enforcement involved so they can help point them in the right direction. And when you have school boards and districts determining, law and order on these children, it's when you have a failed system. And that's what's going on in Broward, and it's going on in a lot of states throughout the country. And like I said, in California, it's illegal to suspend these disruptive kids.
Yeah,
it's illegal.
It is illegal now. So, Mr. Pollack, I mean, it seems so. It seems so obvious. I mean, you look at this and you would think, okay, we need to instill some discipline. So when you went and when you took on some of those, the Broward County, and you tried to get other people elected in there, what was the support from the community for you at that time and from the teachers union? Did you get their support? Because you would think the teachers would want this changed.
interesting you asked that question. So, Broward, it's a horrible, like a Democratic cesspool of a county. That's how I could describe it. It's in the news all the time. You know, the supervisor of elections was removed for, illegal, doing illegal stuff during the election with the counting, with the votes. The ballots were coming in for another week. So what we did was we went school board race, right? But my one of the candidates that I was behind was Republican. But it should be nothing in the school board race. And, so they got when we went to the polls, they said we wanted to arm teachers or Trump supporters. And the school union didn't back the teachers union, went with the incumbent, the teachers union. So we had a tough battle, and we ended up losing. We couldn't make a change. And what's interesting now, it's like a year later, and now the school teachers are complaining that they're getting beat up, and assaulted, and nothing's going on to help them. So I don't know. I've really, these unions and these teachers, most of them are spineless when it comes to school teachers because they don't stand up for their rights, these teachers. They're getting assaulted. They have to deal with these disruptive kids, and they don't speak up. So I really don't have much respect for a lot of them. And especially the ones that belong to these teachers' unions that push these, unethical bureaucrats into these school districts. And really, they're just another arm of the Democratic Party that's pushing policy on kids. So, and I'm feeling this political before everything happened, but I just got an education in it. And that's just from my experience of dealing with the teachers' union and these Democrats that are in Broward County. I got really affected by it. And my daughter got murdered because of these policies. And none of them accept responsibility. So that's why, one by one, I just have to take. I've been taking them out one by one. The sheriff, he just didn't get reinstated. They tried to reinstate him. The deputy, one of the deputies that didn't go in the building, is arrested now on felony charges. Governor Ron DeSantis, I had to get behind him to get elected. There's a grand jury investigation into the school board. 4 deputies that took a perimeter around the building were fired. So a lot of things going on that the country doesn't know. But, parents read this book. The most important thing is not to put your child in this environment.
And Andrew, I don't want our listeners to think that this is just limited to Broward County and into that school system. I saw your interview, and it just shocked me that this, what they call restorative justice, this PROMISE program, you'd stated that these policies have been adopted in about 42% of America's schools, not just Florida, but 42% of America's schools. And I think that's one of the importances of your book. I'm certain it covers that horrible tragedy about Meadow, but also I think people need to be aware, hey, this just isn't limited to Florida. This is now across our nation. I was shocked about that. So really support people in buying your book and reading your book. It's incredible. And you're just, I'm just saying, repeating what you said in your interview, that you said, like, for example, in Baton Rouge, 60% of the teachers have seen an increase in violence, 60%. Jackson, Mississippi, you stated that 65% of the teachers say their schools are totally out of control. In Syracuse, 66%, yep. 2/3 of the teachers fear for their safety, and nationally, suspensions are down, about 70. It's just, this is, what is happening here. These policies are not just about Florida. These are, as you stated, about the United States education system.
I think the thing, too, that you need to understand as a parent, I have daughters. As a parent, what you need to understand is that these policies are things that affect lives, affect safety, affect the ability of your child to get an education. And that is what we should be looking at, and not looking at how do we protect someone who's committed misdemeanors in school, who's assaulted a teacher, who's assaulted a classmate, who's bringing drugs into the schools, who's disrupting the classroom. Teachers don't teach anymore. They just try to control the classroom. And the kids are terrified. And as we know from your tragic incident, they're not safe and people are getting in.
Correct.
Mr.
What
Pollack.
I think now, there's a good chance that your kid will not get murdered in a school like what happened to me, but you subject them to an environment with these emotionally disturbed children or children that are disruptive, and they're not there to get educated. So you're taking like 1% of the school, and 99% of children have to suffer because of these policies. And parents, they need to step up and make a difference, or put your child education. You got to either think public, private school, charter school, home school, or put them in the right environment. And that's what I stress now, because you can't look for politicians to help. You got to take it on your own. It's your responsibility.
Right, we're talking to Mr. Andrew Pollack, whose daughter Meadow was murdered in Parkland. Mr. Pollack, you wrote, the book, name of the book is Why Meadow Died, the people and policies that created the Parkland shooter and endanger America's students. You know, for me personally, when I look at topics I don't know about, I am all about wanting to educate myself, and I feel like I'm a sponge when it comes to that. With the facts in this book, has it been, you've been all over the country talking about it, has it been well received, and are you seeing that reception the same across all policy lines, or do you still see a divide out there when people, not wanting to hear the facts?
When I got into this, I just wanted to make our kids safer, right? The kids safe, the teacher safe, and what could I do? And when I got into it, if I didn't mention gun control, right away I was right-wing, conservative, NRA shill, because I didn't bring up gun control when I just wanted the kids safe. When we made airports safer, there wasn't a gun control debate. So for some reason, if I don't bring the gun control debate in it, I'm Republican conservative. But just because I want kids safe, it's sick when you think about it. But with my book, I can tell you honestly, what the president goes through with this news it's so true, because I was in New York City on my book tour. I was in Washington, D.C., Florida, all across the East Coast, and none of the liberal channels, mainstream media, while I was in New York, would put me on, CNBC canceled on me, MSNBC, ABC. The only station that put me on was Fox. And Fox had me on like every show, explaining my book. They're talking about these policies. So the media, if you don't mention gun control, they don't want to know the truth, and that I could tell you as a fact.
That's a powerful message, considering you didn't choose to put yourself in this position, and now you've seen firsthand what we hear about, and it's a tragedy that getting the right message out and the facts out is just an uphill battle at times. Tell us a little bit about the Guardian program that you helped start that seems just to have wonderful results and stuff. Is that tell us a little bit about how that got about?
It's because the Guardian program and view of the Second Amendment now, how it's changed. So the Guardian program was named after one of the coaches that rushed into the building unarmed. His name was Aaron Rice. I was very instrumental in getting a bill named in the bill. It's named after him. It's called the Aaron Rice Guardian Program. Aaron went in on the first floor unarmed and got murdered. And that's why Aaron murdered. That deputy that went to about 9 feet from the school building and didn't go in. He retreated and hid behind the wall. Aaron got it, and another coach, Hickson. So what that did was we put this Guardian program in Florida that gave the ability for teachers or personnel to go for intense training. We're talking about almost 150 hours of training, where they're held to a higher standard and accuracy than regular deputies. That when they shoot, and that they're taught all defensive tactics inside the school. Which I think is a great idea, and a lot of the school districts are taking Guardian program seriously, and they participate in it. But but there's plenty of counties like Broward. You know, Broward still has a problem with it, where my daughter was murdered, with armed teachers. But a lot of counties are participating in it across the country, not just Florida. And, when seconds count, first responders a minute, it takes them on average 10 minutes for responders to get to the school or any call. It's 7 minutes. So in 7 minutes, a lot of damage could be done. You need someone at the school that can protect themselves and the children right away. So I'm all for it. I even, and it's intense. So 50% of the cadets wash out because it's so hard to pass the class.
Wow.
So I witnessed it. It's a really good program. And I think that parents should look into it for their school districts and push the school boards, to make sure that teachers could do it if they want. And it's voluntary. You get a pushback from Democrats about arming teachers, but they leave out it's voluntary. You know what I mean? You don't want the teacher that doesn't want to do it. You want the teacher that has some knowledge in firearms and that wants to go and do it and volunteer. So it's throughout the country. So I just want to talk to your audience about my view of the Second Amendment and how it's changed and how it's so important to me, the Second Amendment. So my daughter was on the floor, and there was 100 calls to 911, okay? And those charges that came from the Broward Sheriff's Office, they never went in the building to save my daughter. They took the perimeter. They hid behind a wall. They hid behind their car, never going in. So who was anyone out there to tell me that they want to take away my Second Amendment right to defend myself when I'm not going to call 911 where I live. And I'm going to defend myself and my family and my friends anywhere I go, because look what happened, just look what happened at that school. They all called 911, and no one came in there to help them. No one got to my daughter on that third floor for 40 minutes. She laid on the floor. So, now I'm like, I'm a big proponent of every parent, anyone out there, you get a concealed carry permit, you train, and you defend yourself and your family. Because you can't rely on other people to do it for you. And if someone says, yeah, you got to call 911, you got to rely on the police, you got to rely on your government. Look what happened with my daughter. They called 911 and no one saved them.
Yep. It's such a strong message coming from someone who's been there. And like I said at the beginning, I can't even imagine what you and your family have gone through and the calling this has been. So I want to thank you for spending the time with us today. I mean, I know you're busy going all around the country, and we hope that the message continues to get out about your book. It's definitely one you need to read, and just stay vigilant, and we will continue to do the same here. And if we can ever do anything to help on our side, we certainly hope you would reach out to us.
Keep working hard, Mr. Pollack.
Yeah, I do it. I want to my daughter hold everyone accountable. She want that. That's what drives me to move forward. It's about accountability, and parents. Look, my daughter would want everyone out there to know the truth of what happened and how she got let down and the failures. So thanks so much for having me. Every parent, use this book, Why Metal Die, as a manual, so you don't put your child in a type of environment.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, sir. I hope you have a rest of your good weekend, and stay in touch. And like you said, if you're ever in this area, we'd love to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me on this weekend, everybody.
Thanks.
Right, thank you,
Mr. Pollack.
Bye.
I think it's interesting to follow up with this. There were 17 people killed that day, and 14 were wounded. His daughter was shot initially 4 times, and she crawled to a classroom to try to get in, but for some reason, maybe it's what they were trained to do, they didn't open the door. And she covered up another student to protect that student. Right. The shooter came back around and shot her an additional 5 times.
Right.
And killed her and the student she was trying to protect. I mean,
it's just hard. I mean, one of the interviews that I heard prior from Mr. Pollack was He said that he lives with the guilt of not knowing what was going on at the time in these schools. And, we all get tied up in our daily lives, and, maybe you don't pay as much attention to the details. But I can't imagine finding out everything we know now about this person afterwards and knowing that there was so many opportunities for society to step in, and some of these policies prevented that. I mean, how do you – I can't imagine the frustration that him and his family feel in that regards.
Well, you have to add in, I think you cannot exclude the actions of the deputies. I mean, to stand out there behind walls, behind their cars, and as Mr. Pollock said, his daughter laid there for 42 and a half minutes before anyone got her on the 3rd floor.
Yeah,
I mean, This is not like – this was just something that happened instantaneously, and then they contained it.
And I don't understand that, because I know at least locally that's not. I mean, the policies are you go in on it. I wonder if that was a policy with the sheriff.
I heard it was. I heard that's at least what the deputies were saying.
Right.
Now, whether it was true, I don't know.
First, initially you set up a perimeter, and Eric, you and I went through training going in the schools for active shooters and everything, but that was very early on. I'm sure they still have something like that, and I've said this I've said this many times. And Judge, I know you have 2 daughters.
Yes.
And I can't help but think that it's the breakdown of the family that sends that these kids come out of there with no guidance or a single parent family, and until that gets resolved, I think you're going to continue.
You're fighting the result of it, right?
Yeah.
When we come back from the quick break, we're going to finish up on today, talk to the judge, and then it's done for the show, guys. It's been an hour already. So we're on target. We're broadcasting live from the studios of LAPD Firearms and Range. We'll be right back after the break.
News, traffic, weather, plus more stories you'll be talking about. Coming up on 610 WTVN.
It's so nice now that the kids are asleep.
Cheers.
We got the kids, our house, a stable income.
Checking off all the boxes.
But there's one box we haven't checked off.
Well, what's that?
Life insurance.
We don't need to think about that now. We're young.
That's why now is the best time. Life insurance gets more expensive the older you get.
But I don't have
Do we have
time
till
to do a
57,
blood test.
M?
It's such a hassle to meet with someone just to get a quote.
Not with
Beautiful.
Ethos.
Ethos?
It's a modern kind of life insurance. You just answer 4 quick questions at getethos.com and get a free instant quote. No pushy salespeople. You can apply online in just 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Let's do it.
But then what will we do for the rest of the night?
I'm sure we can think of something.
Get your free instant quote and submit your complete application in minutes. In many cases, there are no medical exams required. Just go to ethoslife.com. That's ETHOS. Ethoslife.com. Ethoslife.com.
Information 24/7 and on demand at 610WTVN.com. News Radio 610 WTVN.
Welcome back to On Target. I'm your host, Eric, joined today in the LAPD studio with my father, co-owner Phil. He sits to my left. JC from the sales team is to my right, and we are honored to have
Her Honor,
Judge Amy Solander sitting to my right. You know what? Other than the technical difficulties at the beginning, I kind of like these 30-minute breaks.
Yeah, this is really pretty good. Yeah.
Thanks, Em. We need to talk about that off air, see if we can make that happen. So, guys, we only have a minute or two left. JC, give us a spat.
Real quickly, we didn't get a chance to talk with Mr. Pollock, but in part of his interview, you should watch it. Pull up Gun Feed and tap into that, and he's the star of that one. Not a background check would not have stopped a single mass shooting in this century. Think about that. The background checks are pushing wouldn't have stopped a single mass shooting if you don't have these juvenile delinquents that are committing misdemeanors and felonies in school, and if they're not reported, then they will go out and legally buy a gun, just like this shooter did, totally legally, when that should have been prevented. So you can't have these programs in the school that let these potential murderers go out and legally buy them and then blame it on the gun.
Right,
and
exactly.
And they had at least 40 or more chances to do something about this.
I know about this guy.
26 disciplinary incidents in 1 year alone, and then his mother calling in, and then, them even contacting the FBI and with 2 different tips saying this guy's going to shoot up the school.
It's crazy. Popo, I know, Judge, we kind of cut your time short at the beginning, but Popo had a question for you.
You see a criminal in the act commit a crime. I mean, you have witnesses. You see it. Why do they call him a suspect?
Because our system is based on the fact that you are innocent until proven guilty, and eyewitnesses are not always accurate. Look at what happened in Ferguson, where how many people said he was shot in the back, and 3 different autopsies said he wasn't.
Right.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. Good answer.
What else you got? What else you got, Popo?
Right answer, too. What is your position on plea bargaining? We run into it a lot of time in law enforcement. We do our homework. We catch criminals, and then they plead to a lesser offense.
Well, first of all, you need to understand that our court, municipal court, is the busiest case in Ohio, busiest court in Ohio. We are the second busiest court in the United States. Only Los Angeles is busier.
Wow.
In 2018, we had 182,000 cases filed for 15 judges. That's a lot of cases. There are times when, I mean, we simply cannot hear that many cases.
Right.
And sometimes the prosecutor doesn't feel they have a good enough case. And sometimes it's like, okay, we'll plea bargain this one. You're going to plead to this one.
Right. Popo, you got one last question.
One quick one.
I got a summons to be on for jury duty. Can you get me out of it, Judge?
No, because it's everybody's civic duty, including lawyers and judges. Judges don't get off of it either. We just never get on the jury.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
Great. Thanks for spending the last hour. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Stop by and see us. We're at 999 Bethel Road. We'll be back next week.
Re-elect this judge. Re-elect this judge.
We'll
we
be back
need her.
next week with FBI stats.
Have a good week. Thank you all.
Do you live in Ohio and have Medicare and Medicaid? Then good news, Molina Healthcare has your back. We have a new health plan that will give you more benefits and more savings. Introducing Molina Medicare Complete Care.
Holy
It gives you
Moses.
extra money-saving benefits like dental coverage,
Say
vision,
again?
hearing, over-the-counter benefits,
Yeah, we
and
did it.
more.
We
Don't miss
got
your
our
opportunity
heads
to
together
switch
here.
to
I
Molina Medicare
honestly don't
Complete
know
Care today.